All right, so let's go over some of the things you are going to need to get started. These are things that I like to use when I'm doing my English paper piecing. You may have your own preferences, but I'm going to show you what I like to use. So first off, you're going to need your pattern. We're going to be doing the Rooster with this one. You're going to need a rotary cutter. You're going to need some thread. I'm just using some Orifel thread that I had. This is 30 weight, I believe. You're going to need embroidery needles for when we go to quilt it. You're going to need some between needles for the actual piecing. These are like super tiny needles. We're going to need these curved quilting needles. This isn't necessarily a need, it just makes it a lot easier when you are actually hand basting. I like to baste my pieces with glue, so I like to use the Soline glue stick. It doesn't, it dries clear and it's water soluble, so it washes away later on. This is what I really like. You could also use a glue stick like a Elmer's school glue stick. Those work well too, but because I'm using a paper pattern, I don't want to gum up my cards too much. I find the school glue does that, where this doesn't so much, because I want to be able to reuse them later on. For the actual piecing part, this is the thimble I like to use on my middle finger. You'll see how I do that as we go on. I went through many different thimbles to try to figure out what worked for me. This one worked for me really well. You may find some. Just try a bunch, decide what works for you, but this is the one I use for when I am piecing. It saves my finger right here. When it comes to quilting, this is the one that I use for quilting. It helps when you're going to do the rocking motion for the big stitch hand quilting, which is what we are going to be doing for this one. I like a little pair of embroidery snips. For the threading of the needles, I like to cheat with one of these little threaders because sometimes it's hard to get through. And you are also going to need a little ruler for cutting the seam allowances around our pieces. So besides all of that, I also like to have a bunch of just Tupperware dishes, or these are just takeout dishes from Chinese. They help me keep my pieces organized. You will see how I use these as we go through. I'm going to be showing you how I like to do my big stitch quilting. That's where the embroidery needle is going to come in. I like to use this pearl cotton. It's number 8. It's very thick embroidery type floss. I believe you can buy it at Michael's. I got mine at Along Came Quilting out of Calgary. I'll try to remember to leave all of the links for these down below in the description. And I like to get multiple colors. I find when you're hand quilting, it's almost like coloring. It's like embroidery as well, so it's kind of really cool. For these smaller projects, I like to use this quilting frame when it comes to quilting. This is just a Dritz one that I got at Fabricland. It was super cheap. Yeah, some people don't like to use a frame when they're quilting. They just hold it on their lap, but I like to use a frame. And then, of course, last but not least, you're going to need your many fabrics and colors. It's really fun working with all of these different colors. Very different for me to work with just solids, as I am a bag maker, but this is a lot of fun. Most of these are Kona solids, and I'll show you how I chose these out as we get started. I ordered all of these in half yards. You only need like 1/8 of a yard for the majority of these pieces, but most quilt shops only sell in half yards, so I can make many roosters out of this because I ordered them in half yard sections. Okay, and I almost forgot to mention, we won't be needing this for a little bit, but when we need to do the hand quilting part, you're going to need some kind of batting. This one is just I have no idea. This one was actually from a quilt that I did. This is just scraps from it. I'm making a pillow out of my Rooster, so I didn't need a really big piece. I think this was some silk batting. It was a very expensive one, but you can get any batting from Joann's or Fabricland or your local fabric store for sure. And then you're also going to need your backing fabric. Coco says hi. I said I'm doing a pillowcase, so I don't need anything really fancy for the quilting part, as this part will not show it for my pillow. It'll be inside the pillowcase, so I'm just using a muslin for my backing. If you're doing this as a quilt or a mini quilt or what have you, you will choose whatever quilting cotton you want for your backing. And also keep in mind, if you're making a quilt, you will also need to either make your own binding or buy some pre-purchase binding. I don't need binding for mine because it will be a pillow. So yeah, so that is pretty much, I think, all that you need. Okay, now for choosing out the fabric. So Violet Craft is really great. If you wanted to follow her color choices as per the pattern, it's all written in here on the back page, this fabric selection guide that she had. So she used Kona, corals, nectarines, saffrons, goldfish, pepper. Some of these I couldn't find at my local quilt shop, so I just kind of went through and matched the best that I could. So there's the guideline there. It says here your needles, you're going to need your Milner's size 9 needles or similar. Those are the little teeny tiny ones. Thread, she uses polyester thread. That is probably better, but I don't have any polyester thread, so I'm just going to use my Aurifel because I need to use it up. Try to choose a thread that blends. I like to use the gray, the light gray, because I think it's not seen as much as, say, other colors, or you could try to go close to whatever piece that you're piecing if you have a bunch of different colors. Usually go, say you're piecing these two colors and you want to use an orange thread, definitely go with the lighter thread rather than the darker thread, because the lighter thread won't show as much. Again, you need an 1/8 yard of each of the fabrics. I have a 1/2 yard of all of them. A 1/4 yard for your backgrounds. That would be all of these back here. And then, of course, your backing, which we talked about with your quilting cotton of choice. And then a 1/4 yard of binding if you need binding. So I could find many of these at my local quilt shop, but if you can't, we have our color guide here, so you can kind of go through and match them up. Like this one here is the coral, and it matches up with this color here. If you wanted to use a different color template type thing, you can always go ahead and print out this map and color it, and then choose your colors, and then just put a little scrap of your fabrics that you choose over top of these as your color guide for them. And that's a way you can do it. If you decided you didn't want to do this so much in the reds, say you wanted to do it in greens or whatever, you can totally adjust it to what you need. Just make sure it's a similar shade or as what's going on here. Okay, so that's for purchasing those. The next thing we want to do is we want to separate all of our pattern pieces. And they come on these cards like this. You can also buy these patterns in digital, and then you can print them on your own cardstock, or maybe even if you have a Cricut Maker, you could have it cut it out. I'm not a pro at the Cricut Maker by any means. So this is why I like to have all of these little containers here. Now you're going to see each of these pieces have a symbol on them. So like this sewing machine symbol is going to be this red color. So what I want to do is, as I'm going through, I'm going to take these all apart. I'm going to go one card at a time. I'm going to put all of my sewing machine ones into one container. Just kind of separate them out as you go. And it helps just keep them where they need to be. It will take a lot of containers probably. So E3, E3. You're also going to notice that there are numbers on the pieces, and I'll show you what those are for once we are done separating everything out. So B2. Star. So go ahead and do that, putting all of the symbols into their own corresponding container. All right, so I have all of my pieces separated and I just stack them. I just love these takeout containers for that. You're going to notice for these hexagons, the 1 1/4 inch hexagons, there are no symbols on them, but these are the background colors, which are our B1, B2, B3, and B4 pieces. So all I did was split them up as equal as I can, I think, in between those 4 colors, because we will alternate them through the background. So that'll be all of these browns and taupes and that kind of thing. So I think if I did my math right, I put 16 in 2 of them and 15 in the other 2 for those. So then when we go to do those colors, we will be doing them in those colors. Okay, so next, how do we end up putting these on? So we are going to work, firstly, I'm just going to go down my list here. So I have my red color here, which I believe is a poppy. Okay, so what you want to do, these are all pre-washed, that's why they look like they're fraying. So because the quilts will be washed, you probably will want to pre-shrink your fabrics, which is what I have done already. I probably could have went and ironed it, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's pretty wrinkly. So we want to have our fabric right side down on your surface. So this is the right side of my fabric. I know for these it doesn't really matter which is the wrong or which is the right. They both look the same to me. And then we're going to take our glue pen and take each piece here. So I'm just going to put a swipe of glue on the back like so, and I am going to stick it down on my fabric. So our piece with the symbol is with the symbol right side up as well on the wrong side of the fabric. And we're going to do that with all of our pieces. What you want to make sure is that you're leaving a, well, I like to do a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance in between, or for my pieces. Some prefer a 1/4 of an inch. I just prefer the larger one. So you just want to make sure that you have enough space in between to accommodate those extra seam allowances. So I usually make sure there's about an inch or so in between my pieces on all sides. You can definitely cut these out all separate if you prefer. This is just how I like to do it. So as you can see, this is all of the red pieces. You don't even use 1/8 of a yard. Like, it's just very, very small. So I guess you could actually buy fat quarters. That might be really good for this as well. Okay, so that'll be all of my red pieces all stuck down. Making sure I have enough of seam allowances all the way around. And then next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little ruler and I'm going to start cutting these out. So I'm going to make sure I'm putting my ruler down at 3/8, and I am just going to cut my fabric. A little bit more. Along each side, I just line my ruler up at my 3/8. This is a longer piece. I probably could have used a longer ruler. Okay, so that's one piece done. The glue is going to hold that in place. I'm just going to plop it into my container and continue on to the next one. 3/8 all the way around. I find doing it this way you end up with very little waste as well, and you can kind of map out where they're going to sit on your fabric to get the most of your fabric that you can. Do one more with you. Then along this line. piece, you're going to go ahead and you are going to do that with every single piece with their corresponding color based on their symbol, and put them all in their corresponding bins. All right, so once you have all of your cards stuck on their corresponding colors, then it's time to start basting them and sewing them. So the pattern piece here, they all have their numbers. It's kind of like a sew by number. So you can definitely start at number 1, which is right here. I tend to like to just choose a section and do it from there. So I'm actually choosing just the head of the rooster right here is where I want to start. So what you want to do is you're going to have your pattern laid up. You're going to still have your pieces are right side down with our paper with the symbol up, and you're going to just match it up like what's on here. So right here is sewing machine number 15, and then there's number 16. It goes right about there. I didn't pull out my other piece there. I'll do that later. My number 11 is going to go right like that, and my number 8 is going to go right here. Now you know they're the right way because your symbols will be right side up. If you have it upside down like this, it's the wrong way. The symbols are always facing the way they need to go. So I'm going to start with those 5 pieces. I also pulled out these ones. Actually, I'll just do them as well to show you. So then this number 14 goes this way along here. Then I have the number 12, which will be right there. Oopsies. And then I have the number 6 that'll be there. So you can see all of my numbers are facing the direction they need to go. Oh, and my number 22 will be, how does this one go on? 22, where are you? Will be here somehow. It's kind of, oh, see, kind of it's on an angle, so my number is pointing up, so that'll go there. And then I also have my eyeball piece, which will fit right in there. So you can kind of see how that's starting to form the rooster's head. So now what we want to do is we want to kind of baste these in place. So that's where this glue comes in. And I'm just going to put a strip of glue along my pattern piece, and then I'm going to fold this over top like so, baste it down. Do that with all sides. Now you can see this one might have been better to do with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance because now I can't see my number, but I know what this one is already. So fold them all in using that guide. This was a very bad piece to show what to start with. Now there will be dog tails, dog ears I mean. You don't want to cut those off. You want to keep them how they are. So we're going to put that down there. You're going to do that with all, let me show you on a bigger piece. It'll be a little easier. So right along here and baste it down. And try to glue going the same direction. So I'm working counterclockwise, then your dog's ears all go the same way, and we want them that way. We're going to be nesting them as we sew these in place. They help strengthen that seam a little bit too. You can see I'm working in a counterclockwise motion. Oops. And then I'm going to put that one back to where it was. Helps to be able to see the number. Do the next one. You can also sew baste these, but that just takes so much time. I really do prefer the glue basting, and this glue holds it pretty good. So there's my number 16 piece. So go ahead and do that with all your pieces, and then I'll show you how we're going to sew. So I have those all done. Of course, I think I had to start with the smallest pieces ever. I'm going to show you how to do this with the red pieces though. So I'm just going to thread my Milner's between needle here. It is super small. I like to use these little things I got on Amazon that just helps me thread my needle. Okay, and you don't want to make them too long. You want to make your thread double strand. Okay, oops. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just do a knot at the bottom. I'm going to do a quilter's knot. To do a quilter's knot, I don't know if you can see this, you take your needle along the end, you wrap it around 2 times, grab it and pull it down to the end and it knots it. This is the thimble I like to use. This is a clover leather one, and you'll see why I like to use it here. Okay, so we are going to start with, I'm going to do 8 and 9, and we can see as per the pattern that it's going to be these 2 sides, I believe, going together. I'm just going to double check. 8 and 9, they're going the same direction, or 8 and 11, sorry. So we are going to take these and we are going to put them right sides together, and you can see the straight edges there, they will match up, see? So this is the edge here we are going to be sewing in place. So you're going to take your needle, and this is where you are not going too deep into it. I'm going to start right on this corner, and you are only grabbing about like maybe 2 strands right along the paper. So I'm not going through my paper, I'm going right on top of my paper. Can you see that? Just very, very little, and same with on the other side. I hope you can see that. It's not very much at all that I have grabbed. Pull it tight, and we are going to just whip stitch all the way across, again, just barely grabbing along the top of our cardboard there. And do it all the way across. Now you don't want to be grabbing too much because you don't want this thread to show through the other side as much as possible. So again, I'm not going through the cardboard, I'm just like barely skimming the top of the cardboard pieces along those folded edges. And this thimble saves me because you can see that's where I'm using to push it through, is the side of my finger. Oopsies. Okay, then once you get that side done, you're going to knot it off. I just like to poke it through. One more stitch. I loop it around my finger, the thread, and then I take my needle and I go around 2 or 3 times, and I pull it nice and taut like that. So now my knot is right up against my work, and then I just pull it tight the rest of the way and snip it off. Okay, so that is done. You can see my slip stitches. If you look really close, you can see the gray in between there, but it's really not that noticeable. It kind of gets right in that seam really good. If it's a little bit visible, it's not a big deal. Nobody's going to notice it but you. It's all good. Okay, So I put the purple pieces aside for now because it's easier to show with the big pieces. So those two are together. And when we look at our pattern piece, our pattern here, now between the 8 and 11, this number 10 piece, I went and I pulled the other ones out, is going to fit right in here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to show you it is okay to bend your templates. So I'm going to do my quilter's knot again. Okay. So the first edge I'm going to do is, this is going to go in like this. So I'm going to put it right sides together, and we are going to match up this side and this side. So we're going to be sewing right along there. So I go right to left. So this dog ear, you're going to just kind of pull it out of the way, so you make sure you're not grabbing any raw edges. These raw edges we want to make sure are hanging out in the middle. You can kind of pull it away so you can see where we're going to put our needle in, right in the corner. This is really hard to show on camera. Okay, so I'm going to start right in that corner. Just grab a few strands of the fabric. And you do get faster and faster as you go. And keep working your way across there. Okay, so now you can see I've reached down into that corner where the point is. Now when I get to those points, even though I'm going to be continuing up the other side, I do like to secure it with the knot just to strengthen that corner seam. So again, I have my thread looped around my finger here. I'm pulling my thread through. I'm going to wrap it 3 times, pull my needle tight and bring the knot down. So now the knot's right up against my fabric. Then remove my finger and pull it through. And that's a quilter's knot. Okay, so now you can see, looks good. You can't even see my thread. Yay! Now we want to do this other side. So I'm just going to let my needle hang down here, and I'm going to manipulate this. Now, we have to line up with these sides, pulling back those dog's ears, matching up those corners. But you can see how this is making it a little awkward. Fold it. That is fine. Just make it so that seam matches up and you get a nice and straight edge. You can see I have it kind of bent, and that is okay. And then go ahead and work up the other side. The exact same fashion, making sure you're not sewing in these raw edges that are the little tails or ears there. Just kind of hold them back and work your way up the other side. All right, so that is done. That's what it looks like. Make sure all your seams are good. You can really see how that gray thread really does hide it well. So this is what it looks like on the right side. But again, we always work from the wrong side because that's the orientation of our pattern. If you're working from the right side, no, it's mirrored to this. So I find it easier just to lay it out like so. Okay, So we have, that's three pieces here. Now, to go along this side of 11, nope, I'm not going to do that just yet. Yes, I am. This side of 11, we have a straight piece, and we can see that pieces 16 and 15 fit right in along that edge there. But along the top of 15, you can see that straight edge there is made up of this one, 17, and 16. So it is a lot easier to work with straight edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those three pieces together first, like that. And then once they are together, I'm going to go ahead and attach it to here. So putting this one aside for now. So I am going to go ahead, I'm going to pull this one out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and sew these two together to make that nice straight edge. And then I'm going to come back and then I will put them on top of this one. So once again, we are going right sides together. Kind of pull back the dog's ears so you can see where those corners are and match them up. The dog's ears also help to make sure you don't have any raw edges in there. Okay, I'm going to grab my needle. Once again, do my quilter's knot. So this is why I work section by section. I don't look at the whole big picture. I kind of look at what is going to make everything easiest for me. Where did I put my thimble? So yes, go ahead and sew together those two pieces along that edge for now. Coming to the end. And seriously, I don't usually do this standing up at my table. Usually I'm sitting on the couch in front of the TV. It's a great way, this is a great way to shut off your mind after a long day of work or just to de-stress. It's very meditative. I get the same effect from knitting as well. But it's super relaxing and it's not something you have to do fast. It's something that you can just do nice and slow. Okay, I've come to the end, so I'm going to knot it off again. I think the biggest thing is learning how to work with these little between needles. Are so tiny. Okay, whoopsies, got it caught on the dog ear. Okay, snip that off. Okay, so there we have it there. That's the right side. And now you'll see how this is going to fit perfect along the top of number 15. So we're going to put them right sides together. Fold back our ear. Oops, this one needs to fold over a little bit more. And we're going to do the exact same thing again, but putting those two pieces together. So do your quilter's knot. And you never want to work with really long thread because it gets tangled so easy. It's better to keep having to tie it off, even if it's halfway through. Okay. My glue kind of gave up there. This should fold over like so. So I'm just going to make that happen. Come on, needle. And sew all the way across. It's kind of like doing a puzzle in a way. Okay, one thing I wanted to show you guys. So I've sewn about a third of the way across there, and I'm noticing my gray one here is like 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch longer. And that sometimes happens when you're doing longer straight edges. So this is a trick to evenly distribute the fabric so you don't go past what those measurements are. So usually about a third, even to halfway-ish. when I'm doing a longer stretch, I will check to see how we are matching up. And I don't know if can you guys see that? How my gray piece is like just slightly longer. So I tied off my thread and I'm going to flip this over. And I'm going to start over on this side from this corner, and I'm going to match up those corners. So hard to do it from this angle. So I'm going to match up those corners so they're where they need to be. Okay, and you can see how there's a little bit of a bow in there right now. Just get a couple stitches to secure this corner in. My thread is a little bit too long. Trying not to get it to tangle because it will want to when it's super long. I cut it a little too long. So usually once I get about 5 stitches in or so from the opposite side. Okay, and you can see how it's got the little bit of a bow. I'm just going to kind of squeeze it together, and look, you can it kind of evenly distributes that. So we got this side secure, and then you can go ahead and finish off the stitching to that other side there. All right, so I've tied it off. Oops, goes this way. You see how that's done? See how perfectly matched it is along there? Can't really see my stitches. You can if you look. Can you guys see them a little bit? A little bit, but I find the gray really, really hides them well. Okay, so again, I was confusing myself because I'm looking at the wrong side. So we want to make sure we're laying them right side down again. We're working from the back side. And now we want to join these two together. So the reason we put these together was because these are going to be the same size. And now we have just that straight edge to work because this edge has these two pieces that go along it. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to put those ones together. So again, right sides together. Matching up your corners. I've already tied my knot and I'm going to start from the corner, and then once I get about 1/3 or so of the way, I'm going to make sure these sides are matching up, and if they're not, I'm going to cut my thread, tie it off, and come back the other side to make sure that it all gets evenly distributed if need be. Doesn't always happen, but always check it because there's nothing more frustrating than getting across your work and then it not lining up. All right, so that's what it looks like from the right side. Again, my stitches aren't too noticeable. We're working from the wrong side, which is where it's where you get confusing when you look at the right side and you're like, well, where am I? But you can kind of see how we got the chickens, what are those called, on top of their heads happening there. Okay, so to finish off the section that I chose, next we'll be going in and finishing up my purple pieces. Again, I'm going to work with straight lines. I actually am probably going to piece all of my purple pieces because they're all going to go along this line here. So I'm going to do all of those together, and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to sew them along here. So I will go ahead and do that off camera, and then when I have this and the other pieces, I'll show you how they go together. Okay, so I chose to put in the little eyeball piece too, just because these went around nicely around there for a nice straight line. So again, we have the wrong side up. This one here I'm going to include with the next section that I do because it doesn't quite fit in with this curve here. So that'll be then one of the next sections I do. That one will be done with that. So as you can see, this fits in. Have I got this right? If we pull back the tails, we'll see how nicely that's going to fit in there. So once again, you're going to take these. So this is what they look like on the right side. You can see how perfect they're going to fit in there. Put them right sides together. And we have some curves going on there, so you may have to adjust as you go. But we're going to go ahead and sew those pieces together just like we did with all the other ones. So the pieces just end up getting bigger and bigger what we're sewing together. So it's nice to kind of go about it by doing section by section and then sewing sections together. So once I'm done this little section that I've chosen, I will choose some more pieces, assemble all of them, and then I will attach them to this, and so on and so forth until the whole project's done. So again, all these little curvy joins right here, like you can see where our corners come here and here, I will knot them just to give those corners a little bit more security, I guess, or stability, or just to make sure that they definitely don't have any little gaps there. I won't break the thread. I'll just do a knot in those corners and then continue on my way. All right, so there's that from the right side, what that looks like. That's what it looks like from the wrong side. The wrong side never looks pretty, doesn't have to. Now, again, it's not perfect. You can see my stitches in some of them, but really they're so minute, and once we get this quilted, you're not even going to see them. Now, another thing I want to show you before we continue on with the rest is when I only have one here. But when you have a block that has a paper piece on all the sides of it, you can go ahead and take out that paper. So I just got this one right here. So it's this one right here that is totally encompassed by other pieces. You always want to keep the outer perimeter of papers in. But once that is completely surrounded, you can go ahead and take that paper out like that. You can see the glue didn't break the paper or anything like that, so I'll be able to use this again for another project when I want to make another rooster. So what I usually end up doing is I just end up having another one of these containers, and I put all my papers in there, and when the whole project's done and all my papers are pulled out, I end up putting these in a baggie and putting them back in with the instructions so I have them all together. Okay, so you can see there, we got one out. It all looks really good. If you want to see what this part is on the pattern, it's this part right there. You can see right there and right there. So I will just continue that for the whole thing. I will pick a section. Now, I've done this whole section here. I think I'll probably go in and do this corner and attach things in, and then I'll work my way down and attaching pieces as I go. Now, one thing with this pattern is when we separated all of these out already, the 1 1/4 hexagons, and there is no, we just know that they're these 4 colors that you can use. So you can randomly place them how you like. I will probably be following this picture and keeping my colors relatively where her placement was because I really like her placement, but those can be placed however you want. So you're going to do the whole pattern exactly that same way as your papers go. You can pull all your papers out at the end if you like. My fear with that is like that one was so small and my seam allowances were so big that I would be scared I would forget that paper in there. So I usually take my papers out as I go. As soon as I notice that something is totally encompassed by other papers, I will pull it out as I go. Just then, just to make sure I get them all. So in the end, the only papers that you will have left in it is the outer perimeter. And we do need the outer perimeter in there until we're ready to finish the quilt, which at that point we will pull them out. So keep on going with that. I may come back in a little while, probably a week or so, and show you further progress of where I am at on this. Otherwise, it all goes together exactly the same. Again, work from section to section, pick a section. This little section probably took me maybe 45 minutes to an hour to do only. So it's something where you can pick a section and it is just a really nice sit down and unwind for the night. So happy paper piecing, everybody, and I will see you in a little bit. All right, so it's about 3 weeks later, I guess, or so, from when I started piecing this, and I just finished this today, and this is what it looks like. Yeah, it was super fun to do. You can see I've taken out most of my papers from the center, so now I'll have to take out all of these exterior pieces that are kind of holding the shape of this and give this a good press. And then you just go ahead and you can either, I will end up trimming up all of my sides so they're nice and even, so all the way down to here once I've taken those papers out. Actually, first I won't be trimming it. I will be quilting this first, so you will sandwich it on with your batting and your other side quilting fabric, or whatever you want your underside to be. I'm going to hand quilt it. I may do a series later on how to hand quilt. I won't be doing it this time. You can machine quilt it, what have you. Trim it all up. These ones measure 20 by 20 inches once it's all trimmed up. You can see how you could do English paper piecing in smaller format to make panels and make them absolutely one-of-a-kind excuse me, panels that you could use for accent panels on your bags. Like, there's so much you can do. You can take these and you could definitely sash them and make a larger quilt with all of the animals if you were doing all of these Violet Craft animals. I will show you what I am doing with this. So once I get this all quilted, I've already done this one. These are actually Christmas presents. So I took the lion one. You can see I have all of my hand quilting on there. I did big stitch hand quilting and I turned it into a pillowcase. So I just have a pillow form in here. I've chosen my back side here to do a pillowcase, and they just make amazing pillowcases. So that will be what I do with this rooster. This one is for my mom. This one is going to be for my sister-in-law. So yeah, there's so much you can do, but you can also see how big of a quilt this would make if you did all of the animals together, or you can make like a little mini quilt to hang on the wall. There's just so much you can do. It is just so much fun doing anything that is English paper piecing. At least I think so, because I don't know, I just find it really, really relaxing in front of the TV. It's creating and sewing without having to sit at the machine. I don't know, I didn't think I would like it, and I absolutely love English paper piecing. I truly do, and I will keep going at it. And look how big it, you can see how big this square is. Like, ooh, turned out so very, very good. So I really truly hope that you did like this tutorial. I know it's different than the tutorials I usually put out. I think in the new year I will be doing more on piecing. Maybe we can work on Grandma's Flower Garden English paper piecing, show you how you can use the hexagons to do that, and how you can use different shapes to make different things like butterflies or what have you. And maybe we'll even do one where we're making panels for our bags with English paper piecing. I just think it's a lot of fun. Anyways, I hope you guys all liked this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye!